Our final speaker for the panel is no stranger here, Fiji, and also the Pacific, Mr. Tevita Boseiwaqa. He is currently the Director General for the Center for Integrated Rural Development, Asia Pacific, based in Dhaka, Bangladesh. So we'll ask him to wear a few hats too this morning, reflecting from his original hat of coordinating many of these things at the national level in Fiji, and then now out in the wider world, and see whether this whole area and subject of South-South cooperation is something that actually harmonizes quite easily and strategically, for that matter, to put the Pacific forward. So put your hands together, please, for Mr. Tevita Boseiwaqa.
Thank you, Excellencies, Taltala, and distinguished participants. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge what has been shared, especially during the inauguration ceremony, that from the available data, that the Pacific has done quite well in the overall volume of cooperation, South-South cooperation, and also in its geographical spread. However, as always, in any development plan, strategies, there's always a problem of implementation. That's where the challenge is. And I would like to look at this challenge of implementation from three perspectives, three dimensions. One is, it may be difficult, problems to implement because of the legality of things, because of the policy framework that is in place. Secondly, it may be because of the institutional framework that is in place. And third, the program itself. I really am not qualified to speak on this in the context of the Pacific, but I'd rather be asking some questions. And I believe you know well on the situation in your country and in the Pacific as a whole when I come up with some of these questions. On the first one, on the legal and policy framework, Pacific as one voice in terms of South-South cooperation. When you go to the South-South cooperation institutions, intergovernmental organizations like G77, etc. Do you have this one voice, one message? That is my question. Secondly, for the member countries, do we have legal frameworks, if not policy framework embedded in our development plans? And are these plans in the objectives for each ministry or those who are responsible? The SSC objective, is it reflected in the development plans? Is it reflected in the ministry concerned development plans? On the institutional framework, let me ask this question. Is there coordination? Is there coordination between these Pacific Islands intergovernmental agencies? I noted that in the morning PIDF is the main voice for SCC. And you have Pacific Community, MSG, and others who, more or less, if I'm correct, providing the technical aspects and support. Do they coordinate? That is the question. Is PIDF strengthened with funding, the technical expertise for the voice to be heard? That is another question that we have to look at. In terms of programs, do countries develop their own programs so that it can be packaged as the Pacific best practices and showcase it to the world? To brand that as the Pacific brand? There are various other ways of trying to share practices. Chair, let me look at some of the opportunities. I'm just asking questions. Some of the opportunities that we can look at. From the perspective of rural development, we have an approach which is called the integrated rural development approach. Integrated rural development approach. And that can easily be transferred to any development. So we may call it as integrated development approach. So in this development approach, I've heard about multi-stakeholders approach. It's not only that. It's not only that. It's not only multi-stakeholders approach. It also includes multi-sectoral, multi-level approach. It also includes geographical approach, the urban and the rural. My friend Mr. Ovoli said balancing. Is there any balance approach between urban and rural, or we are just more focused on the urban? That is my question. And just the last one, just a statement on our geographical, geospatial information management. We can only share information if we have data. Do we have that? Do we really have this geographical information management? And finally, after this, we have been talking about being smart, knowledge, through the mind. We have smart villages, we have smart cities. And now we are moving away from nature. And the robots are now replacing men. And we're getting more and more problems. So, perhaps in the next 50 years, or before 50 years, you will be so robot farmers out there in the field. We already have that in the car, planes, etc. Now, it leads to one approach that perhaps we start looking at it. I see that it's a bit easier for Fiji to look at it. The wisdom-driven development approach. Wisdom-driven development approach. Where you have smart technologies, smart plus spirituality is going to be equal to wisdom. So it's simply the mind plus the heart is going to be equal to wisdom. Because that will help us to go back to nature, connect with nature, connect with spirituality. Perhaps that is food for thought, and I will stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are very, very important questions that were posed in that presentation, but they lay, I think, at the center of a self-assessment by our countries in our region if we wanted to move ahead and improve how we practice South-South cooperation.